Hello. Hello. Are we live?
We sure are.
We are live. Hi, I'm Journey.
And I'm Kaylin.
And we are part of Fastly's DevRel team. And today we're doing a stream where we're going to show you how to build an app that's protected by OAuth. So you'll only be able to view the content on this site once you're logged in with GitHub. So before we jump into building, I just want to talk a little bit about what Fastly does. Fastly is a company that is a CDN, that does security, that does computing on the edge. So yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff trying to make the internet run even faster. And what we're going to be working with today is our product called Compute at Edge, where we can run WebAssembly natively for performance and security advantages. You can use any language you like with Compute at Edge. We're going to be using JavaScript today, but you can use Rust, you can use Go, you can use WebAssembly, whatever you like. So that's really cool. And I'm going to pass it over to Caitlin to talk about what DevRel does.
Yeah, so we are the developer relations team, and our responsibility is to produce content such as the live stream that you're watching now, as well as blog posts, documentation, examples. If you've ever used the Fastly Developer Hub, then that's content that we've not just curated, but also maintained. And we also create and maintain the tools and libraries that you use to interact with Computer Edge, such as the CLI and our Terraform provider. We build libraries for Computer Edge itself. And if you didn't hear, last year we actually acquired a company called Glitch, and the Glitch team have integrated with us to create a fantastic developer experience organization. And as part of that organization, we've got the amazing Fast Forward program, which sponsors open source projects such as the PyPy Foundation and the Rust Foundation. It's fantastic work that they're doing, and we're really proud to be supporting the developer community. Journey, where can people find us if they're interested in hearing more?
You can find both of us on our Twitters and Mastodon, and we're also on dev.to/Fastly. And we're also on the Fastly Devs Twitter. And we're also on our Pride and Joy, the Developer Hub. That is where you can find all the information about how to build on the edge with Fastly. So yeah, keep an eye out for that.
And yeah, thank you, Journey. Today we are going to be talking about something really cool. This is like a really common use case for Computer Edge that we've seen. So we've kind of cooked up this hypothetical scenario where we've got a API documentation website that is maybe for a private API that is just internal to our company, or perhaps we only want to share it with a select few other companies. And a pretty easy way to determine, if a developer is who they say they are is by having them log in with GitHub. A GitHub account is used pretty universally in the software world, and also their API is really easy to integrate with Computer Edge. So what we're going to do is we're going to build a service that sits between our existing API documentation website, which actually for the purposes of today will just be example.com. And this service is going to sit in front of that. It's going to handle every request that comes through, and it's going to make some decisions based on the cookies, and it's going to make some requests to GitHub, and it's going to do all of that to ensure that the user is who they say they are before we allow them through to the backend. So, Jenny, would you explain what people would need if they want to follow along at home?
Yeah, so if you want to follow along at home with us, we have a default JavaScript starter kit on the Developer Hub. Kaylin, if you want to send a link to that in the chat. This one already comes with Webpack and everything, so we can use our HTML loader with it. I tried to use the empty JavaScript starter kit for this, and it got mad at me, so we used the default one. And then we're also using Expressly, which is developed by DevRel's very own Dora. So hi, Dora, if you're in the chat. It's very similar to Express. So if you're familiar with Express, you should have no problem using Expressly. It's just made specifically to be used with Compute at Edge. And then you'll also need to create a GitHub developer application, specifically an OAuth GitHub application. And that'll give you a client ID and a client secret key. And those are things that we are going to use later. And then you're also going to need some knowledge of JavaScript because we already have a JavaScript library for Compute at Edge, and it's very dev friendly. But we also have a more complex starter kit using OAuth that's also written by Dora. that uses Rust. So if you're interested in Rust, then check out the Developer Hub for that. Okay, so I think that's everything. Did I miss anything, Kaylin?
No, I would just echo that what we're going to be doing today is a very kind of basic example. You certainly wouldn't want to throw this code in production right away. But as Jenny mentioned, Dora has created a fantastic Rust OAuth starter kit that is fully featured. You can link it to your identity provider with a config file. It's like magic, to be honest. We do have lots of ready to use solutions, but today is just a great way to demonstrate how easy it is to build with Computer Edge.
All right, cool. Should we jump into it?
Let's jump into it. I'll pop your
I,
screen up and I'll let you take everyone away.
cool. Okay, so I have a version running locally here. So it's just a very simple web page with like a little button to log into GitHub. And I'm actually already logged into my GitHub, so we didn't see the whole thing where it will like send me to GitHub for me to sign in. But yeah, this is our example.com backend that we're using. So yeah, there's already I already have like since I'm already signed in, there's already like a user login data and stuff. So let's look at the code. Um,
Would you be able to zoom in your VS Code a bit?
yeah, do you know what the
Command and plus.
command plus? There we go. Is that better? Should I do one more?
Maybe one more.
Ooh, nice. Okay,
I've got
very
some poor person like watching on their phone.
good. Yeah. That person is living in the future. Okay, so this is just gonna be where all the main logic of our code is, and then we have some styling here, and then here is the login page that's being served. And then there's also this where we're injecting styles and props into this login page. So you can see I've created a variable called GitHub login URL that's going to get passed into this. So, okay, we're using Expressly. So you're going to want to import router from Expressly and make sure at the bottom of your code that you've got a router.listen. So that way you can listen for requests. And then let's talk about, I guess, the flow of the code. So with this router, with this path going to the home page, we're going to check to see if the request starts with the path GitHub slash, because this means that the user has gone through GitHub to sign in. And if they haven't, then what we're going to do is we want to check for a cookie that says that they're authorized, that gives them an authorization token. And if they are authorized, then we're going to serve them our protected backend, which is in this case example.com. And then here we are down here creating that GitHub login URL, which takes these parameters. These are from GitHub itself. So if you read the GitHub documentation for OAuth apps, there's like a ton more parameters you can use as well. But these are the basic ones. And it's going to take all of these and then put them into this URL. So that way, when the person clicks it, they'll get redirected to this callback. And then this callback is going to get, you'll have a code. There'll be like a special string that will say like, oh, hey, like you're signed into GitHub. And we can trade that code for an access token. So what we're doing is we're getting the code here. This is from the query. And then we're going to fetch the GitHub user data that matches that access token. And here we're saying if user data.login, so if there's something in login, because this user data will be an object, then we will set a cookie to auth. Remember her all the way up here. There's auth. So we're going to set that cookie to the access token and redirect us back to the home page. But now, since we've got this cookie, instead of showing us the login page, it'll show us our protected backend. So that is pretty much it. There's a couple other things too. So we have this get config, and when you make a Fastly app, you'll have this Fastly TOML file, and here you can use it to configure backends, which we have set here. So this is our protected backend. This is github.com, and then this is the GitHub API. So you also need both of these to get the GitHub app working. And then we also have a config store. This is formerly known as dictionaries. But this contains, as an example, the client ID and your client secret from your GitHub app. So if we go back to index, under get config, we're going to get that config store and get these two keys that we need. And then we'll call this down here and get those two things. And that way we can get the client ID. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's pretty straightforward. So now, do you want to talk about how we can improve upon this, Kaylin?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing I will just clarify quickly, which is that the config in the fastly.toml file is just for the local testing server. Later on, when we deploy the application, we'll show you how you set these resources up on the actual service. But yeah, I mean, as for what we're going to do in the stream today, there are a few things that we can look at. Now, there's one thing that you may have noticed in chat that is currently the check at the top, where we decide if the user should be sent to the backend or not. We're currently just checking if the auth token exists. But what's possible is that someone could just set that to like some random value, or perhaps the user who logged in with GitHub has ended their session, for example. So I'm wondering, Jenny, if it makes sense now to replace that check, and we'll actually fetch the GitHub user data every time to ensure that it's still valid.
Sure. How should we do that?
So where we currently check if the auth cookie doesn't exist, what we actually want to do is check if it's well, actually inside the else condition there, we will want to just call await fetch GitHub user data with the cookie. And then I guess just like you did before, we would check the login property to see if it exists. And if so, then we will send them to the backend. Otherwise, we will, I guess, redirect them back to login.
So if there is login, what are we doing?
So if there is login, then we want to allow them to access the data. So currently what's on 31 would just go into there, I suppose. Otherwise, this isn't the cleanest conditional ever, but if we put in another res.redirect to the login page, that should cover that case. Fantastic. So with that change now, we should be able to invalidate a token on the GitHub end, and then it would log us out. Would you be able to verify that quickly? If you go into your GitHub account settings, you'll be able to see your authorized apps and then revoke this one. And then hopefully at that point, you should stop being able to access the page.
If I go to my GitHub, like sign out of GitHub?
If you go to your GitHub settings and go to applications on the left, authorized OAuth apps, and then if you just revoke your OAuth compute demo by clicking the three dots on the right and then revoke, you should find now that when you refresh your app, you will get taken to the login page again.
Mhm.
Yay, fantastic. Okay, cool. So that leads on to another improvement we can make, which is that generally you're not going to want to protect any kind of data by just like allowing anyone with a GitHub account to access it. You're going to want to make it only accessible to people within a given organization, maybe, or potentially multiple organizations. So I feel like in the section where we're currently in the fetch user data function, that would be a good place to add another fetch to GitHub, which would fetch the organizations. Um, so let me have a look at the documentation quickly and figure out what that endpoint is. Here we go. So it is just you're going to make a very similar request to the one you've done there, but instead we would make a request to api.github.com/user/orgs. And then in the data that's returned, data there should be an array of orgs.
Mhm.
So what we would do there, I guess, is you renamed that function from fetch GitHub user data to fetch GitHub orgs. And then perhaps add another function above this one called validate GitHub orgs. And that would take the same parameter as fetch GitHub orgs, which is just an access token. That should be an async function, and also validate would be part of the name of the function. Fantastic. So yeah, I guess at this point you would call fetch GitHub orgs as you have before. So like let orgs equals await fetch GitHub orgs. And pass the access token into that. And then you should be able to call, I think .any exists in JavaScript, which allows you to pass a function that will return true if any of the if the condition is true on any of the children. So can you pass a closure into that function, like another set of brackets, and call it, I guess, org. Those should be round brackets, by the way. Like we have done when we call router.get or router.use, and then we pass a function in. We're essentially going to
Mhm.
pass a function into this one. But this function will compare the org.login to the one that we expect. So if after those brackets you have an arrow for like a JavaScript closure, is that what they're called in JavaScript? A closure? Yeah,
Sure. I always just call them curly brackets.
that's it. And then I guess you would just return org.login equals fastly. And I think that'll be a lowercase f as well. Cool. That should work. Then the last thing we need to do is replace all the places where we called fetch GitHub user data. Instead, we want to call validate GitHub orgs. And this time, so now validate GitHub orgs is actually going to return a Boolean. So you can just throw that straight into the if statement. So it would be like if await validate GitHub orgs. Yes. Oh, and also it's going to need the access token still,
Right.
which you need to fetch with rec.cookies.get auth.
Okay. Should I
So you
maybe make this
yeah, and then you can replace line 22 with just if access token or if bang access token. Oh yeah, line 24. Cool, brilliant. And then can we just take one more look at the validate GitHub orgs function because I think we may have missed a return earlier. Yeah, so just before orgs.any, we want to actually return the result of that. So line 93, just start that with a return. Great. Okay. So I think there's one more thing we have to do, which is add a scope to the initial login request. So when you log into an application using a GitHub account, by default, it doesn't have access to the orgs that you're in. So to add to the scopes, we currently have read user, but we also need to add read org. Great. So I believe now if you can rebuild and start the server, it should work.
do we want to leave this fetch GitHub? We want to change this to fetch
Ah,
GitHub
yeah,
user.
good catch.
Fetch GitHub org.
Yeah, and then 63 as well. Dot login is not going to be there. User data is now just true or false. It can be just if user data.
Yeah.
Oh, also that actually shouldn't be fetch GitHub orgs. It should be validate GitHub orgs.
Oh, which one was it?
In the callback. Further down, further down. This one, yeah, line 62.
Validate GitHub orgs.
Yeah, cool. So what's happening now is on every request, we're calling validate GitHub orgs, which is making a request to the GitHub API using the access token in the cookie. That request, if the access token is valid, will return a list of the user's organizations. We're then going through that list of organizations and checking for one that is called Fastly. If that exists, then we would return true, and that would allow the request to be passed to the backend. If not, we return false, and then the user is going to be redirected to the GitHub login page. Now, there is one case that we haven't handled here where the user is logged in with GitHub, but they aren't a member of the Fastly organization. But I think for now, we can just test that this works, and we'll come to that case in a moment.
Okay. Orgs.any
Ah,
function.
okay. Let me do some Googling. Oh, it's some
Oh,
not
some,
any.
that's right. All right, let's take two.
At least we got a useful error message.
Let's see. Interesting.
Okay, so we've broken it, but that's okay. That's the beauty of live coding. So let's go look at the Fastly Compute Serve console. and see if we've got any indication of what's happening.
Request completed.
So I think what's happened is because we have single sign-on for our Fastly organization, it's actually not being included in the API response.
Mm,
So let's really quickly create an organization with just you and I, and we'll test it that way.
okay.
Uh, and we'll call it Fastly Live.
Are you making it or should I make it?
I'm making it now. I'll
Okay.
invite you. The username to replace on line 94 is just Fastly Live, all one word. I've invited you. I think you'll have to check email. I'll take the screen off the screen.
Thank you. Am I off?
You are.
Um, oh, maybe it's in my other email.
I did send it to Journey Fastly.
One sec.
Dora says, I can never remember the array functions in JavaScript. No, neither can I. I think I've been doing Rust, which has any, and I think Java is also any as well. This is the first time I've actually seen some. Hi, Dominic in the chat. Nice to see you here. Sue and Keith. Sue's not a moderator. Let's fix that. There we go.
I'm not seeing this invite.
Oh no. Go to github.com/fastly live and see if it comes up on the screen.
Okay,
No.
here.
Um, technical difficulties.
Oh.
It actually hasn't shown you as invited, so I can try again. Give it another try now. Oh, if you go to github.com/fastly live now, it will allow you. Should have planned this earlier.
Okay.
There we go.
Join passive live.
Fantastic. Okay, so now, as long as you've updated the username in the code and restarted it, we should find that it works.
Interesting. Still not working.
Okay, we can take a look at the console, see what's happening. I feel like what's likely to be happening is that we're ending up in a redirect loop.
Yeah.
What I would suggest is maybe between line 92 and 93, let's log the orgs and see if we're getting the expected result.
Okay, got a log. It's empty.
Zero, zero. Okay, so let's I suppose after line 107, we should do a console.log await rest.txt and see if we're getting maybe like an error message.
Oops.
That's to be expected. But hopefully now in the console, we have some kind of useful output. Oh, it's just an empty array.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
so let me read through the documentations. This only lists organizations that your authorization allows you to operate on in some way. E.g., you can list teams with read org. You can publicize your organization membership with user scope. So perhaps let's add just the scope user to the original login request as well. And then also the change that we just made where we added the dot text. Let's remove that now because we know that we are getting valid JSON.
what is this?
The whole line can go.
Okay.
So perhaps granting access to Fastly Live. There we go.
Hooray!
That's more like it. So we should find now, I'm going to do something really mean. I'm going to now remove you from Fastly Live.
No.
And as soon as I do that, we should see that when you refresh the page, oh, hang on, it says commit to. Okay, yeah, refresh the page.
I've got to log in
Fantastic.
again.
So that is a really basic kind of access control using Computer Edge. Obviously, this is not perfect. We've got one more edge case to deal with, which is in the org. So I imagine, Journey, if you log in now, you're just going to get stuck in a loop. Would you try that?
Yeah. So when I click
Yeah,
log in,
okay.
what happens? We'll stop.
So
Let's get sent.
what we need to do is in the sections where we call validate GitHub orgs, if it returns false, then instead of redirecting the user to the login page, we should send them an error page. Very sorry, I don't know who's ringing my door repeatedly. That's frustrating.
We should send
Um,
them.
so would you be able to add a new view in the views folder that's like a page that says you're not in the correct organization, and then send the user that page essentially.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry, I have to step away for 2 minutes, but I will be back very shortly.
Okay. I actually can't look at chat right now, so I'm sorry. I could look at chat, but um, then you guys would also be looking at chat and it would be kind of strange. So I can't chat right now. I'm sorry.
I'm back.
Did I miss anything in chat while you were gone, Caleb?
No, you did not. We had a nice message from Estella saying it's not a live stream without technical difficulties. I love watching the troubleshooting process. Thanks for letting us tag along and learn. Well,
Oh,
I love that. I think I always say this in every stream is that if it doesn't go wrong, then actually you're not learning as much as you could have. And when working on a platform that's kind of cutting edge, it's really helpful to be able to see where people slip up and actually how they rectify it. And yeah, that's the beauty of doing it live. I'm glad you feel the same way.
cutting edge. I see what you did there.
Cutting edge. That was not even intentional. I mean, the beauty of this being a JavaScript application is that anyone with a little bit of experience can go ahead and tack on more functionality to this. It's really cool that you could just have like a static storage bucket with a bunch of HTML files. But because you have the ability to kind of intercept the requests and responses, you can do all sorts of things. If we wanted to go a step further, I don't think we'll have time today, unfortunately, but one thing that you could do is even go and inject the user's name into the HTML so it looks like a dynamic website where they're logged in on the nav bar. The possibilities are really endless when you think about like what you can do with JavaScript when it's not on the client, because obviously you can't trust the client. You can't do this all in the browser.
So great.
Yeah, that looks right.
Is that HTTP
Um,
error view?
yeah.
Okay, let's see if she cooperates.
I think there's one last thing actually, because we also call validate GitHub orgs further down in the callback.
Oh, that's
So
right.
I think you'd want to return the error there as well.
Mm.
Next one, I think. Yeah, that's it.
All right, so I've been rudely kicked out of our little club. I'm not the
There
right
we go.
person.
Fantastic. So yeah, I mean that's basically it. I guess one thing we can do before we wrap up is publish this to a Fastly service. I know you already have a Fastly service set up, so do you maybe want to Fastly compute publish, push up this latest version, and then we could just walk people through the config on manage.fastly.
Yeah.
Hopefully without exposing any access tokens. So once you've finished building your project and testing it locally, obviously you can deploy it to the Fastly global network. It's really easy to do that. You just run Fastly compute publish. And if you haven't published it to a service yet, the CLI will actually prompt you through creating a service, configuring the backends. One thing you may not know about Fastly is that compared to traditional edge compute offerings, you actually have to register the backends that you intend to connect to in order to make HTTP requests to them. So you can configure that in the fastly.toml, but it does need to be then kind of pushed to every service that you deploy to. But as you can see here, Journey has a service live running. It's the exact same thing as what we've just demonstrated locally, but this is in the cloud. So if you are if you go to the URL that you can see here, I'll throw it in the chat. Hopefully you'll be given a login screen. What is
This
it?
is going to
Painfully
break also.
related Gen. Oh, it's going to break, is it?
This is going to break because of my GitHub app. So I would have to change the URLs in the GitHub app that I registered. So if you want to take me off stream real quick and I can make those changes, I
No
think it
problem.
should
Give me
work.
2 moments because my control has frozen. Okay, you are clear.
Cool. Let me go to my
I think actually everything on this page is censored. So if you don't mind, could I show people this? Because this is actually maybe useful to see.
Oh, sure.
So this is in the GitHub settings when you create your application, you have to configure the authorization callback URL. And this is basically to make sure that nobody uses your client ID to then send users to another page after they've logged in. So the reason Journey's having to update this is that because previously we were redirecting people to localhost, but now that we've deployed this to a real application, of course, we need to update that in the config for GitHub to not complain. So that's done there. Don't worry, there was no client secret there. It is censored. And now if I pop the link in the chat, people should log in and get the error message that they are not oh actually apparently they
Messed up
redirect
the
your eyes. Is it HTTPS?
an S.
That's why.
That that
And yeah, I mean, if anyone in the chat wants to really see that it worked, then you can pop your GitHub username in and I can add you to the org and you can see that it works. But in the meantime, we would love to take any questions that anyone may have about this solution, about Computer Edge, or just like how our days are going. That's also acceptable, I suppose. Journey, in the meantime, would you just take a look at the configuration on manage.fastly.com,
yeah.
the
Yeah, that's a
backends,
good
the
idea.
config store?
Where is my OAuth services? OAuth compute demo.
Sue says that was so good, especially since auth is pure evil. I do agree. I can't think of anything worse than dealing with like SAML and identity providers. That's why I always go to GitHub or Google for login to everything because it's just so straightforward. I mean, everyone has a GitHub account or a Google account. Um, yeah, I mean, not sure how I feel about two companies controlling login everywhere, but it seems to be a great developer experience.
Well, don't forget you can also log in with Facebook, so it's actually three companies. Doesn't that make you feel a little bit better?
No comment.
Okay, so here is what if you have a Fastly account and you set up your Fastly account to when you publish, etc. There's a better way to explain that. Sorry,
When
but
you create a Fastly account, one of the
yeah,
things you do is create an API token and you give that to the CLI so that when you publish, it knows which account you're
it knows where to
publishing
go.
to.
So this is what it looks like, and this is yeah, manage.fastly.com, and you can see all your services. So here's mine, painfully related Genet, and I had to, like we said in the TOML file, when we set these backends, it's only for the local server. So if you want to configure backends, you have to do it through the Fastly site. So I've configured these backends here, and then I've also created a config store, which has my precious GitHub secrets. So I won't show you, but they're there. And then you have to when you create a config store, you can actually, let's say if you have multiple services and you, for some reason, want to use the same config store for all of them, um, when you go over to resources and config stores, you can click this button, link to services, and this will give you an option to link it to your other existing services if you'd like. So if I want this app to use that config store, I just have to make sure that I link it. But yeah, it's already linked. So yeah, that's what it looks like on the Fastly site end of things. Does anyone
One
have?
last thing,
Oh yeah,
perhaps you could show some stats. I'm not sure that there will be much data there, but if you go to the stats tab, is there anything coming in? No, okay. So this would be cool to show off perhaps on a larger app, but of course, like everything that happens on Computer Edge is instrumented. You get these lovely statistics, which you can not only see in the dashboard, but also export to your own services using our API. So, I mean, everything on this panel is all linked together. It's all very smart. And yeah, I mean, we've got a lots to come in this area. It's going to be very exciting.
yeah. How many are there of you in here? If you all go to my app, maybe we can get we can get some stats to show off. We've already gotten this many requests.
170. I suppose I'll log in. Yeah, I'm logged in. Anyway, yeah, you certainly get the idea. We've had a lot of fun here. We'll push up the code that we've written today into the GitHub repo, which is actually on Journey's account. So there's a link in the chat. The code that's in there now is what we started with, but right after this, we'll push it up so you can explore it. Like I said, it's not production ready. This is just an example of what you can do with Computer Edge. But if you are interested, then make sure you head to fastly.com and sign up for a free trial of Computer Edge. Or if you want to get started without creating an account, you can actually head over to fiddle.fastly.dev, where you can experiment with Computer Edge services in Rust, JavaScript, and Go without even having to create an account. It's all in the browser. You just write your code, click a button, it runs. You can see all of the telemetry. It's an absolutely fantastic tool. So yeah, Journey, any closing words?
Thank you for joining us today. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for squishing bugs with us. And yeah, have a good weekend, and we'll see you on the edge.
See you on the edge. Bye bye.
Bye.